Guys, welcome to the channel. The channel is MrbiscuitSpeaks, and today is one of my favorite days. It is time to do Animal Farm. We're in Animal Farm Chapter 9. Like, share, subscribe, preemptively comment. We're doing these preemptive comments now, where before we watch the video, go down there just for the algorithm. If you support what we do, just say, hey, I'm here for this. Specifically, if this is the type of reaction video that you enjoy. If you're a renegade, let's say. We're talking about Ren today. We are in Chapter 7 of Ren's 8 chapters. And look, Ren is one of the ones who kind of inspired the book club. He's one of the ones who inspired this very channel. And so, it's time to continue. We're on Chapter 7 of the 8 chapters, looking at the life and times of Ren, his legacy, and what made him the man he is today. So with no further ado, let's continue here.
Before he even had the test results, the doctor in Brussels glanced up from the form he'd asked me to fill out, and he said, "You have Lyme disease. We can run the tests, but I'm certain of it." I'd heard of Lyme in passing during my hours trawling the internet, but I'd never spent long diving into it. It was an extremely rare disease in the UK that you can get from tick bites, so it never really came across my radar. I sat there, puzzled for a moment. I said, can I get better? He said that many people go on to recover, some don't.
Wow. You know what's interesting? With all of the people, with all of the doctors and the nurses and being passed around, even going to, gurus and, people who, do Reiki, trying to find out everything that he can to get over this problem with hours and hours, which kind of equate to days in internet research. It's interesting that there's still hope at the end of the day. There's something in Ren that still clung to hope in spite of having been passed around from failed attempt to failed attempt over years and years and years. Whereas when he gets Lyme disease, where he gets that diagnosis, it's Lyme disease, he doesn't roll his eyes and brush that off. It's something new, but he's still saying, "Is there hope? Can I get better?" Right? He's still kind of clinging to the hope. To the desperate attempt to kind of get out of this thing. And I think that's admirable.
Can I get better?
Can I get better?
He said that many people go on to recover, some don't. Right. I wanted to ask him so many questions, but my mind at that moment was totally blank. The test results eventually came back, sure enough, positive for Lyme, and the co-infection Bartonella, along with many other biomarkers which suggested autoimmunity and immune dysfunction. My whole life, I'd been waiting for this moment. To have something printed on a piece of paper that showed that I wasn't actually fucking crazy. That I could shove in the faces of anyone who'd made me feel like a hypochondriac or like a head case. But when the moment finally came, I felt numb. It was hard to rejoice. I had the lingering PTSD from the psychotic meltdown the year before, which made it pretty hard to break into the realms of happiness. Instead, I did what I always do. I got home, and I took to the internet, and I researched the best ways to escape. The summer that I got sick, I spent 2 weeks camping in a small festival in Dorset. One night, me and friends decided to climb a nearby hill to build a bonfire in the woods. On the way there, the fields were full of long grass and deer. 3 people, all my age, who all attended that festival came down with ME or fibromyalgia-like symptoms over the course of the next year. One was a friend of the family who was shut in a dark room for years because the light would be too intense for him. Before that festival, he was bursting with life, a successful capoeira dancer, reduced to a zombie. Lyme disease seemed to be as much of a medical labyrinth as ME was. On one side, there was a whole host of specialists who believed Lyme bacteria becomes chronic, evades the immune system response, can sometimes evade testing, and leads to debilitating symptoms unless treated with a long course of antibiotics.
If any of you guys have any insight into what autoimmune disease is, definitely leave that in the comments. I'd love to correspond. I think that autoimmune is when your body is somehow attacking itself or responding negatively to something, and it begins attacking like essential organs or, essential cells. I mean, look, my wife is a healthcare professional. She knows a lot more than me about this. But as it pertains to this part, just kind of let me know if you're familiar with autoimmune.
Evade testing and leads to debilitating symptoms unless treated with a long course of antibiotics. On the other side were doctors who claimed that Lyme can't persist. It's easily treatable with a 2-week course of doxycycline, and further symptoms following that must be due to an autoimmune response triggered by the Lyme, or perhaps an unrelated, undiscovered cause. I educated myself as best I could on all theories, trawling through research papers on PubMed, conversing people in support groups, often contacting leading Lyme scientists via email or phone to ask them questions. Lyme disease is caused by Borrelia, a spirochete bacteria that causes symptoms like extreme fatigue, confusion, joint pain, heart problems, digestive issues, anxiety, depression, and in extreme cases, hallucinations.
My gosh. Listen, you know, a part of me feels like Ren's attention to detail when it comes to all this research, like his familiarity with all this terminology as a response to all of the research that he's done and all of the doctors that he's met throughout this time, it almost makes me feel like when you're in an extremely intense amount of pain, you deeply want to know it, right? It's like, he's familiar with like how the cells are responding and how bacteria responds in this way. And it's almost like it puts you in touch with the pain you're experiencing so that it's not meaningless, right? And I think in chapter 1, he talked about how he deeply needed meaning to be attached to this suffering. It can't just be meaningless. And I think that that's a part of what turns pain into suffering, right? Pain is just a physical sensation, right? But it becomes suffering when you really start metacognizing, when you start thinking about your thoughts. We talked about this, I think, in Ren's chapter 2, where it's like you think, how long is this going to persist? Am I going to be able to be a musician again? Is this going to incapacitate me and leave me unable to fulfill my responsibilities to others, right? And man, I could imagine myself scouring the internet, just trying to be in touch with what it is that's causing me that pain. Like, oh, I know what's happening now. This is the result of X, Y, and Z. And this is a response to, the medicine and my body rejecting this kind of treatment. Just trying to amass some kind of control, right? Can maybe be its own form of therapy in this.
Issues, anxiety, depression, and in extreme cases, hallucinations. So everything was adding up. I fell down internet rabbit holes of learning how Borrelia produces outer membrane vesicles, which contain outer surface proteins which can modulate your entire immune response, essentially dampening it for its own survival. It was a truly insidious pathogen, a smart one out of a twisted horror sci-fi. There would be online groups claiming it was created in a lab in Plum Island off America and weaponized. Due to the widespread suffering it seemed to cause, and given how hard it was to treat, it was easy to see how people gravitated towards these sorts of superstitions and speculations. The main thing that made my head swim was the sheer number of treatment options, in part a byproduct of the cognitive dissonance in the medical industry at the time. There were countless antibiotic protocols, herbal protocols, immune system modulating protocols, wackier ones where people would be stinging themselves with bees or swallowing certain helminth parasites to modulate their immune systems. It was a wild west, and I wasn't so naive to be unaware that there were a lot of quacks in that space, selling people snake oil, financially taking advantage of desperation. Like a lot of the medical industry, I despise people and companies who see opportunity to profit from other people's misery. If you're watching this video and you're one of those people, I would highly consider switching your role in the world and being on the right side.
See, guys, this is one of the reasons that we're interacting with a sage right now. Right? When we talk about Ren, we are talking about a sage. Like, understand how this portion of Ren's journey really interacts with what his music means. Right? When he says that he's familiar with these snake oil salesmen from being diagnosed with Lyme disease, he looks out and sees all of these people with all of their different fixes. Some people doing weird things where bugs sting them. There's a whole myriad of medicines, a bunch of herbal stuff, right? And a bunch of people that's making a lot of profit off of the fact of how confused people are, right? The fact that Ren has been through that, has deeply been through that, and has learned to deeply despise that kind of tendency in humanity, I think speaks to how honest a musician and artist Ren is, right? I mean, I think we've already said this before. If you don't like, Ren's musical talent, you happen to be deaf. I mean, listen, guys, I am a lyricist, and in my opinion, an elite one. I mean, right, respectfully. And when I first heard of Ren on the Black Pegasus channel, I was floored. Like, I was so floored. Like, Ren shared the reaction on his IG and it got like 15 million views. Hence this channel, right? And so just the honesty and the transparency. And I think we're kind of seeing the origins of his transparency as an artist and seeing up close what it looks like, how gross it is to take advantage of other people's misfortunes just because you have the opportunity to interact with someone desperate, right? Just a fantastic piece there.
You're one of those people. I would highly consider switching your role in the world and being on the right side. One common factor a lot of these protocols seem to share was you would certainly get a lot worse before you got any better. There was something called the Jarisch-Herxheimer reaction. As you kill off the pathogens in your system, they release biotoxins in your body, which are eventually cleared out by your kidneys and liver. These can cause systemic inflammation, additional fatigue, brain fog, mood swings, pain, flu-like feelings. I was no stranger to these things already, but when they got even worse, it was a mental battle. I sought out as many success stories as I could, and I looked for common threads in the ones of the people who made a full recovery. It seemed like long courses of antibiotics were working for some people, but to do it safely I needed to be in the care of a specialist. The NHS were fucking useless. After multiple appointments, one with an infectious disease specialist, they told me the most they could give me was a couple-week course of doxycycline. I knew that probably wouldn't be enough. They told me chronic Lyme wasn't something that they recognised.
He said, they recommended a couple courses of doxycycline, and he said, I knew that wouldn't be enough. Do you see how, he has had to become his own doctor throughout this? It's like he's familiar with so much of what they're saying. It's like, oh yeah, we'll just do this. We'll get you out of the way. And he's familiar with a lot of these medicines and a lot of the treatment options. And it's phenomenal to hear that when someone is so desperate for their own relief, and I know I've said this before ad nauseum, I understand. When someone's desperate for their own relief, the depths that they will go, it's like, how powerful is the mind that you can just, say, oh, I know this isn't going to work. I've been on this treatment before. That just fascinates me.
I knew that probably wouldn't be enough. They told me chronic Lyme wasn't something that they recognised. I presented them with printouts of much of the research I'd gathered online for the most recent studies, which they dismissed. One of them told me I seemed obsessed, and they asked me if I thought about getting a hobby. I fantasised about dragging him by his tie across his desk and pressing a stapler into his skull. Then I politely got up and left. Doxycycline would lead to improvements for...
He politely got up and left. He said, I imagined that I could just drag him across the desk by his tie and staple his head, right, with his stapler, but I got up and left. When he got up and left, guys, understand that this is the beginning of Slaughterhouse and Seven Sins, where he takes this anger and fury and makes it art for all of us to view, right? And so his id definitely has an outlet that we have the pleasure of being able to consume as viewers.
Stapler into his skull. Then I politely got up and left. Doxycycline would lead to improvements for a short time frame, and then my symptoms would come creeping back. I tried many antibiotic and herbal approaches to treat the Lyme without much luck. I tried things like Rife treatment, which is essentially running an electromagnetic pulse through your body in hopes that it will kill the bacteria. I was desperate. Yeesh. It seemed that America took Lyme disease far more seriously than the UK, which made sense as it was far more prominent there. I settled on a doctor called Dr. Gemsack over in Washington, and when I could, I would busk or I'd sell music online to raise money. My girlfriend at the time also ran a fundraiser, and my mum said that she'd also help contribute towards flights. It's not easy being sick and broke, but somehow we made it work. A week before I was due to fly out, something happened which changed my whole life. I've always been a believer in the good that you're putting out in the world coming back to you. Luck, therefore, is more of a karmic consequence. When I was making video blogs, I wasn't doing it to build a following or for any sort of social merit or personal gain. I was doing it because I thought I was going to die. I was doing it because I wanted to feel like I'd left some sort of positive mark on the world, like I'd helped. I remember waking up one morning and going through the comment section of the latest video I'd posted, only to find a message from a British doctor who is running a clinic over in Germany in Los Angeles. He is the third and final angel of this story. He was reaching out to offer to help, and he didn't want anything in return. We exchanged messages and ended up jumping on a video call together. The angel explained that he sympathised with my story. His son was a musician, and at his clinic he'd seen firsthand the countless times the destruction that Lyme disease was causing. He explained his clinic was involved in cutting-edge stem cell procedures and seeing promising results for various autoimmune and Lyme patients. The cost of the procedure was upwards of $25,000, something that I could never afford. But he said that every year...
Sorry, guys, I have to rewind it just so that I know. I mean, I think I might have missed how they actually got in touch. I know that the doctor left a message on one of his videos, but I feel like Rin, I mean, he talks about there's angels in his story. And by calling them angels, it means that he doesn't see his life necessarily as a hell, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing for someone who's been through so much. Rin was an interesting part of my story. Because I had a really, really successful sales career prior to giving that all up to do this and to do wisdom school at the Hilliard Library every other Sunday. We come together, a big group of us, and just talk about deep things, talk about how we can change ourselves and then thus change the world. And Rin played a big part of that. And so you can see that Rin, as a result of kind of having the angels show up for him, is trying to be one of those angels that shows up for others and allow that thing to spread. Does that make sense?
Together. The angel explained that he sympathized with my story. He was reaching out to offer to help, and he didn't want anything in return. We exchanged messages and ended up jumping on a video call together. The angel explained that he sympathized with my story. His son was a musician, and at his clinic he'd seen firsthand the countless times the destruction that Lyme disease was causing. He explained his clinic was involved in cutting-edge stem cell procedures and seeing promising results for various autoimmune and Lyme patients. The cost of the procedure was upwards of $25,000, something that I could never afford. But he said that every year he personally selected patients to attend his clinic for free. He would offer me the treatment free of charge. All he wanted me to do was document my experience. It made sense to me that if Borrelia was...
That's phenomenal, right? Guys, remember he was talking about serendipitous moments, right? And I think that his angels show up in these strange moments, right? And he called it serendipity, I think in chapter 1 or chapter 2, times where the universe just seemed to align. It's like, how did this happen at just the right moment for this to happen? And look, I mean, if he wouldn't have released the video right when he did, or if he had, thought that, this is a mistake, I'm not going to make any positive mark on the world just by uploading videos of me being sick and desperate. If he wouldn't have taken the time to do that, then this doctor would never have seen him, and it's just crazy how the universe responds in that way.
Was able to modulate the immune system for its own survival, that an intervention that focused on immunological homeostasis would help. The clinic also offered antibacterial IVs targeting the Lyme and various other treatments intended to build the body back up after years of chronic health complications. I was kind of in shock. When a stranger reaches out and offers something so generous, it's natural to doubt his intentions.
Right.
But something told me to trust this kind offer. I really had nothing to lose. And as morbid as it sounds, my willingness to die made it easy to throw myself into a more experimental procedure. There was also some security in the fact that he wanted me to document my experience and share it with the world. If it had been more sinister, surely he wouldn't want that sort of exposure.
Right.
I decided I'd still go to the initial consultation with Dr. Jemsek as I'd raised the money, but I would catch a flight to LA once it was done. Money was still an issue. The entire treatment length was about 6 weeks, and back then I could have never afforded the accommodation for that long. I decided to hop on Facebook, and I found a Lyme support group based in LA. There, I found people going through the treatment at the clinic who were happy to put me up in their guest rooms. Despite all our faults, human beings' ability to empathize, lift up strangers, and collectively solve problems purely because it's the right thing to do is such a beautiful characteristic to carry.
100%. Guys, as far as the Animal Farm group, we now have a Discord community where you can introduce yourself to the rest of the people on this channel. That's being handled by other people who have just taken it upon themselves to take that on. They know that, I'm a father, I'm a husband. Those are of primary importance in my life. And so they check up. They say, hey, how are you doing? Like, are you, do you want me to take over this? The Discord has hardly even been built by me. I have just put that out to you. People who have reached out to me saying, hey, can I help? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it's blossomed into this fantastic thing just because people, man, despite how angry you can become at people. And a lot of people are deserving of anger. There's so many of us who just deeply want to help and want to help, this whole thing blossom into something wonderful that all of us can enjoy and that our kids can enjoy. There are still those people. And for those of us who believe in that, this whole community is for us.
Collectively solve problems purely because it's the right thing to do is such a beautiful characteristic to carry. I sincerely hope that we can find ways to hold on to our own empathy and humanity as we step into the future. I believe these traits will save us as a species. Survival of the fittest is a myth in a society where we have all our basic needs met. It becomes survival of those willing to cooperate. The time came and I flew out to America with Momoko, keeping me company and keeping an eye out in case my health crashed. I went to the initial consultation in Washington, D.C. They recommended that I get on a minimum of a year-long course of various antibiotics and supplements, some to be rotated. I saw this as my fallback plan if the stem cells didn't work. We then headed to LA. It was summertime, so it was boiling. The clinic was based in Beverly Hills. The juxtaposition of spending most of my life in waiting rooms that were falling apart, feeling like a defective product on a conveyor belt that's being rushed along only to be dismissed, to then go into being in what felt like a 5-star health spa where there seemed to be a genuine care and interest for my well-being was quite odd. I was greeted enthusiastically by the doctor. He seemed a lot younger than his age. When I mentioned this, he laughed and he said it was the stem cells. As we spoke, I could see his childlike enthusiasm for what they were doing at the clinic. Stem cells were very in vogue at the time. There was also much territory to explore, and the potential of what they could offer harder to treat diseases was incredibly exciting and promising. It was hard not to feel some of that contagious excitement leaking from the doctor. He explained that because I've been sick and misdiagnosed for so long, it wasn't going to be easy. There was no magic fix. At times I might feel like giving up, but I should trust the process. So I did. When we first arrived, I was staying on the floor of a young couple's apartment. They were just starting treatment at the clinic. Fontaine was a songwriter and he was an actor. One night he asked me if I liked bikes, and then he took me out on the back of his Harley Davidson and drove at high speed through the hills surrounding LA. It was interesting talking to Fontaine about her experience. I'd found people I could relate to online, but very rarely did I meet people in person whose experience had mirrored my own. She'd also been through the ringer of misdiagnoses, medical dismissal, left to suffer, trying desperately to claw back her own life. I started to realise this problem wasn't localised to the UK. It was global. So many people were going missing and screaming into a void. The first week at the clinic was aimed at building my body back up. I would sit for hours while various vitamins and nutrients were dripped into my body to address any deficiencies that may have occurred from years of being sick. They also offered talk therapy, lymphatic drainage massage, ways to calm your nervous system that would aid healing. I was still having to pinch myself that this was all free. I felt guilty for the people who had to pay. It wasn't easy. Occasionally I'd have an immune reaction to one of the IV drips. I didn't know at the time, but I had mast cell activation syndrome, which meant my body would become highly inflamed in response to many food, vitamins, even things like perfumes or scents from everyday cleaning products could set it off.
Guys, I'm no medical specialist, but I'm wondering if the body just starts fighting things. When you just become a petri dish of all of these failed attempts at medications and vitamins and herbal things. It's like, I wonder if the body just starts saying no to everything, and I know that, that's potentially true, but it's like, I wonder how much better this procedure would have gone if it hadn't been for the years and years of misdiagnoses, mistreatments, and things like that.
A year later, while in the German clinic, I would be minutes away from nearly dying after going into anaphylactic shock during an IV drip. A nurse luckily caught me in the nick of time and injected me with an EpiPen. I spent a night in the emergency ward with Germans who couldn't speak a word of English, who put me on an electrolyte drip that made me feel even worse. During the second week in LA, I moved places to stay with another couple. The husband had been a prop and set designer for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. They were extremely generous with their time and space and became almost surrogate parents to me and Momoko. There is an unusual companionship you feel with someone who has faced similar levels of suffering as yourself, like an unspoken bridge of understanding. At the time, I was having difficulties with my girlfriend. I wanted her to come with me to LA, as this felt like a pretty pivotal moment in my life. It was a time where I really just wanted to feel safe, but she couldn't take the time off work. I think I felt a little bit funny about the fact Momoko had made the time and sacrificed her own work and she hadn't. She was being distant with me whenever we spoke on the phone, which frustrated me more and more. We ended up arguing a fair bit. I think this is the beginning of seeds that would soon grow into finding extremely difficult to be in relationships in general. I usually feel pretty unlovable, extremely isolated, very antisocial. I felt alienated, often bitter that most people go through their lives not knowing what it's like to hurt every day. That they didn't appreciate the freedom their bodies allowed them as they should. To be alive and to not hurt is a blessing. To be alive and not hurt is all I want.
I think that was a really powerful statement. The dichotomy between not being able to take off of work, right? And the thing is, I'm not going to judge at this moment, somebody who wasn't willing to take off of work in order to go to LA and fly to an entirely different country. There's an extent to which I get it, but I love how Rin puts it, where he's like, when you haven't really been going through it, you don't understand the gravity of a certain moment. You don't understand the gravity of, it's almost like being blind and receiving your sight, right? If someone that you loved or were in love with were blind, and they had been born blind, let's say, or they'd been rendered blind as a young person, and they were going somewhere to be able to see again or to see for the first time. If this was someone you deeply loved, the only reason you wouldn't go is failure to recognize the gravity of that moment. And I love how he puts that, because it's not accusatory, right? It's not saying, you bitch, I wish Rin would write a book, and maybe this is the book.
To be alive and to not hurt is a blessing.
Right.
To be alive and not hurt is all I want. The day of the stem cell transplant finally arrived, and I was nervous, as you would be getting a giant fucking metal rod shoved into your skin. The doctors offered me an anti-anxiety med, and I was never one to turn down free drugs. With autologous stem cell transplant, they take cells from your own fat, centrifuge them, and then do some magic science shit and then feed them back to you in an IV. To acquire these cells, they have to do liposuction. The issue was I was already skinnier than a shadow on a cloudy day. They would usually take the fat from the stomach, but as I had virtually no body fat, they had to go in through the back near my coccyx. They spent about 20 minutes sawing away at your insides and separating your muscle from fat. Then they inject you with a liquid that breaks it down and they suck it back out. Fresh for the stem cell harvest. There's a video of me drugged up and laughing as a needle as big as my forearm gets rammed into my back. I returned home pretty bruised up, but full of hope.
Like they're digging for gold. And so I'm pretty kind of bruised up. I've got these two little holes here where they took the stem cells out and they put them back in my arm. You can't really see on this camera because the light's too much, but I've got more holes in my arm than a Scottish heroin addict.
I'd met people at the clinic who were further along the process than me, who were singing.
He said, I've got more holes in my arm than a Scottish heroin addict. And throughout this process, he hasn't left his humor, right? That there's a old saying, I grew up in black churches, like Pastor Joyner's Perminson's New Life Church, right? And they would always say, God will never put more on you than you can bear. And there's even a song, always remember that he loves you and he cares, and he'll never put more on you than you can bear, regardless of whether or not you believe that's true. It seems that, the fact that there isn't a complete and total and utter collapse of hope. And I know he got close sometimes, but just seeing Rin's humor while there's big holes in his back and arms, and this being his 40,000th procedure with someone who's doing something slightly experimental for free, for him to have that humor, that ability to still make jokes and things like that. Guys, don't take that kind of thing for granted. This is a special individual.
In my arm, you can't really see on this camera because the light's too much, but I've got more holes in my arm than a Scottish heroin addict.
I'd met people at the clinic who were further along the process than me, who were singing the praises of how much better they felt. For the first 3 months, I didn't really notice much, but I was told it would take time. I was already doing somewhat better from the 6 weeks of IVs. It's an unusual psychological space to be teetering on the precipice of hope that your whole life could change. There's a certain tension and a certain excitement that comes with that. I was also having big problems with my girlfriend at the time. I'd found out some things that had really shaken my trust. In retrospect, I should have just walked away then and there, but I held on because part of me blamed myself. In my sickness, I held people at a distance, so I felt like I deserved negative things. We would fight a lot, The health problems added a whole new dimension to something that would be hard for any couple. I couldn't trust that she loved me as much as she said she did because of certain things that I found out. A few months after the transplant, me and her decided to get away from everything and stay with her mother on the south of Spain. One night, we were sat on the grass, looking up at the sky, being surrounded by avocado and lemon trees. It felt like we were in some sort of Eden-like paradise. She asked me to marry her. It was her way of proving that she loved me and would always love me. And I said yes, but I meant no.
He said yes, but he meant no. I guess that's a part of him feeling that he doesn't necessarily deserve the best, right? Because, like he said, in his illness, he would distance himself from people. He didn't want people to see him just essentially feeling like he's dying, feeling miserable. And so he had distanced himself from her to where he felt like he deserved the blowback and deserved some of the negative treatment. And so when she offered to marry him and made herself vulnerable in that way, I think maybe a part of him just says, you know what? She's taken a lot from me, right? She's taken a lot of shit. You know what I'm saying? And that was maybe impulsive. Man, that's a rough thing to do.
And that she loved me and would always love me. And I said yes, but I meant no. Even when we went to pick out rings, I just felt scared. I lost the ability to trust love. I don't fully blame her for that. She was an awesome person trying to navigate a complicated situation. I blame my sickness. My sickness was an inseparable from me.
If I met Rin, one thing that I would ask him if I were to interview Rin was his desire to say no to her at all, was any percentage of that decision based on the fact that he felt like there was maybe hope with this new procedure, and that maybe if there was hope with this new procedure, that would open avenues and open up a new horizon that he had never experienced before? Because, Rin is wildly talented, right? And I mean wild for wild and talent for talent. Like, he has this wildness and this talent that would just really set his trajectory off if this thing really worked, right? And I wonder if feeling that hope, feeling that blossoming of hope for the first time in a long time, made him feel like, maybe I want to slow down, and maybe I want to, and of course at this point I'm putting words in Rin's mouth. This is something that I would ask him if I were able to.
A complicated situation. I blame my sickness.
I'm just going to rewind it just a bit, guys.
Even when we went to pick out rings, I just felt scared. I lost the ability to trust love. I don't fully blame her for that. She was an awesome person trying to navigate a complicated situation. I blame my sickness. My sickness was an inseparable from me, and so I blame myself. After about a month of being home, she sat down with me one day and told me she decided to move to Australia for a year. She told me it wouldn't change anything between us. I had my doubts. Despite the additional stress in my life, something amazing was happening. About 4 months after the stem cell transplant, I noticed the desire to leave the house. I noticed more colour in my skin. I joined a gym that was a 3-minute walk from my house. I started working out for the first time in years. Music started pouring back into my life. I was singing more. I was producing more. And this was all leading up to my favourite chapter so far.
This is by far my favorite chapter in Rin's life. This is how I got introduced to Rin. That was really loud.
Oh, that sounds wavy. Oh, shit. It's like I don't work. No. No flame to spark my girl. My Nike's laced in dirt. Shit. I feel like
sounds incredible. Who's that guy? That guy sounds legit.
Live the right life, my eyes wide and I strive to stop my demons gripping from the inside. This road is dark and I can't find the batteries for my flashlight. I'm blind eyed and outside. Ren, go.
He just does this crazy, vocal riff, and he's like, Ren, go.
Ren, go.
Guys, anybody who is hearing this, that ooh, 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 right? You can see the beginning of Rin beginning to truly blossom. Remember in Money Game, ooh, 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 right? You can see it starting to blossom here. So this is like a brilliant kind of insight into the origin story.
These drugs don't work. The pain, it takes control. Bloodstained shirt. I feel like I'm always being chased by the devil. Yo, I try to talk, but I can't seem to get my spoken words right. And I try to keep my stutter alive. And this life, it can be ish, right? Cut you like a flip knife, twist and make you sick, right? And I feel maybe I'll be better off alone. And so I redirect the calls from my phone. I learned so many lessons from depression, but in essence I'm just wishing that these bad thoughts were gone.
Guys, to fill the streets with music is in and of itself an act of rebellion in a strange way. Like, really think about this. You see these people on the sidewalk, right? There's all of those stores that are saying, you remember Socrates was famous for walking through the marketplace and saying, look at all the things I don't need. You know what I mean? That was Socrates' personality. That's something he actually did. I think Democles, not Democles, Diogenes, the cynic, when Napoleon asked him, what can I do for you? Napoleon was a giant fan of Diogenes. Diogenes said, stand away from the sun. You're blocking my light. At that point, Diogenes lived in a barrel, right? And so this act of just putting music on this space, like on the curb, and having people just surround, saying that this experience, this transcendent experience is more important than whatever I have going on today, in, the shopping stores and all that stuff behind me. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to bring people together in that way and to have the boldness to actually implement it, right? To actually get it done and to believe in it. That guy is really not playing around. So I need to look up who this person is, and I'm going to do that after this. but he's really, really, really speaking my language on the vocals.
This weight on this verse is actually mad. Sometimes I guess, sometimes it's when it's like time is against me. In my mind I kind of mind, yet on my mind it tortures me. But I shine, cause when I shine it's like my shines, they set me free. And I rhyme, I shine so bright, these rhymes come out of me. Times I bleed, times I crawl, times I slip, times I fall. Times my back's up against the wall so hard that the whole building could fall. Times I bruise, times I break, times I'm true, times I'm fake. Times I'm when the forward is to open and just swallow me for goodness sake. I think I'm gonna break cause the aching is fake. I'm awake in the world.
Ren doesn't make any sense, guys. Ren doesn't make any sense, bro. Like the fact that he can during this time, and this is one of the reasons I hope if the 8 chapters don't include this, then I really, really want to interview Ren and ask him, how during this time does your ability to do all of this develop? Where did you have time to study elite lyricists and become one? When did you have time to study elite, pianists and guitar players and vocalists? He has like a reggae vocal that he can turn on. And then he can turn on this weird crooning vocal that's beautiful. That ooh, ooh, like how did he simultaneously develop that while dealing with all of this trauma? That's my number one question for this guy. If anybody can get that question across them, you don't even have to mention me in it. That it's my question. I want to know the answer to that. Nah, I need it again. Sorry, I need that again.
I think I'm gonna break cause the aching is fake. I'm awake in the world full of days. Blessing the breaks with the breaks they break. And I live in my universe in the relate in the way. Wait at the world, don't wait. We make mistakes when it's all at stake. We eat our cake, sometimes no time for double taste. But that's just the way life goes sometimes. But I don't wanna end up in the gutter being bad. But my trouble face down in the puddle where the sun don't shine. I'm coming on the back on the track and the top and there's nothing no peace. Like I live with this one pattern and I'm praying. Oh Lord, take this pain away. So that was a song that me and Ren wrote. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's Ren Makes Music, that's REN Makes Music. I am Sam Tompkins UK, that's Sam TOMPKINS UK. This next song is called Same Old Situation. We wrote this not so long ago. Ren Makes Music, that's it.
Sam Tompkins. Sam Tompkins. Guys, thank you for being with me on this one. This video is far too long, but thank you for sticking with me through it regardless. Love you guys. See you next time.